Hello and welcome to our Monday morning show. Woo! And we have so many things to talk about today. Oh my goodness, has it been a wild, wild weekend? And it's only going to get crazier because today is day one of the DNC, the Democratic National Convention. They're not starting until later today, but there's lots of news, lots of preparation, lots of stuff coming out. Unfortunately, we're not exactly getting the rollout of policies, positions, all the news that was happening right before the RNC that really led into it. We're getting a lot of protests. We're getting a lot of there's tons of protests happening in Chicago. There are business owners, tons of business owners boarding up in front of their storefronts so that there's no vandalism, so they don't get stolen from. I mean, it's a little bit of a different thing. And it's funny because I went back and did some research of like, was this stuff happening? Just because I didn't see it on my feed doesn't mean it wasn't happening, right? So was this stuff happening in Milwaukee when the RNC was there? And while they're absolutely what's humorous is like the news headlines for the RNC was some business was booming and some wasn't, depending on the politics or positions of the businesses that were there, right? Some were like, we totally just like, we didn't get any business. This was the worst. We were preparing for like a big boom. Yet nobody in Chicago is preparing for a big boom right now, except for Planned Parenthood, who apparently is offering free medical abortions and vasectomies for anyone who attends the DNC. They're fully booked. I don't understand. We'll get into this. We're going to talk about this. But I wanted to start with something a little bit lighter because it's just funny to me. And it pops up on my feed this morning and it just made me laugh. I don't know who this guy is, but he's sure making me laugh. Listen to this. Short but sweet, short but to the point. Honestly, what in the world? I mean, I absolutely agree with him. Who owns our politicians? Who's giving them money? Money talks. Money limits people from talking. It does a lot of those things. And it's interesting. A lot of people have been talking about like, is Trump different this time around than he was the first round of elections? It seemed like he was a little bit more inhibited the last round. He may have had advisors around him, but he certainly wasn't listening to them. Is he a different version now? Is he more toned down because of the money that he's getting, the people that are paying him? I wish that money didn't control people's behavior and agenda, but the reality is a lot of these politicians are very much paid off. And we're just starting to realize that more and more now. And so while this is, I love that video because it's just funny. He's like sitting there eating ice cream and oh man, but he's right because the reality is so many of these politicians are paid off. And I do wonder on either side, whether it's the Democratic side or the Republican side, like who is behind the decision making, pulling the triggers on certain things, holding back on other things. What is actually these persons like these people, what's Kamala's actual opinions on things? Because we don't even have her formal opinions on things, let alone her personal opinion. What about Trump, right? What is his personal opinion on things? What is his formal opinion on things? And so, we have a lot more from the Republican side with Donald Trump. We have a lot more that has been talked about. Obviously, he's gone on and done a lot of interviews. He's done a lot of conversations, open dialogue conversations. The guy clearly loves to talk. And then we've got Kamala, who's just starting to get out there and do some very, very simple questions in interviews. She just did her first, I guess we would call it an economic policy speech. It was very vague. And what she did say was very disturbing. And lots of people are commenting on it. We're going to talk about that today as well. But I just want to I want to riff a little bit on this who owns you conversation, because I think this is really relevant for anyone. By the way, any of us, whether you're wanting to be a politician, wanting to be in a level of authority, or you're just a normal person that wants to get a job, or wants to work your way up into an organization, wants to work your way up into a certain career, a certain field. Who you associate yourself with is really important. And I think that it's something that we don't talk about often. We're just sort of like, well, I'm going to get this job, or, this one accepted me, so I'm going to go to there. Or, even when it comes to colleges, right? Like, well, I got into this one, so I'm going to go there, instead of really understanding, okay, like, who's backing these organizations? Who's backing these businesses? Who's backing these colleges? What are their policies going to be? Who's influencing those policies? Who's influencing those guidelines? Who's influencing those agendas? All of that's really important, because I promise you, at some point in your life, that stuff is going to come back to haunt you. And it did, in a very contrasted way, for several nominees in Senate hearings in the past, in July in particular. I'm such a nerd. I love watching these Senate hearings and these nominee interviews. Sometimes they're nominees for judges, they do different positions, but the Senate often is the one interviewing them to see what, to actually vote on them either being accepted or declined for the position. And this one from July, oh my goodness, I don't have the date on here, but this one was from July 25th, 2024. And Senator Josh Hawley is interviewing this gal. And I want to play a little bit of it, because it could be funny. And there's times where I absolutely laugh and chuckle, and I'm like, oh, snap, right? But this should be a really important thing for us to notice about the organizations, the businesses, the people that we choose to associate with. Are they, their positions, their opinions, their statements, do we agree with them? Because ultimately, if we associate with them, we're backing those statements. So I want to play this video, because it is quite the video. Let me share my screen. We're just going to play a little bit of this. We're going to comment on it, of course, as we usually do. You know what's funny is this sound, like, the first time I listened to this sounded like a compliment. Like, he was like, "You're clearly very focused, very driven, very, like, intentional about your time." And this absolutely comes back to bite her. Oh man, no. And the ad. What's interesting about this is how she's going to answer is very, very fascinating. I'm very excited for you to see how she answers, because what she ends up doing is this whole, well, this is an organization that I've been on the board of. I am not associated with everything that they do. And he really says, hey, listen, if you are a part of this organization, if you are backing this organization in any way, then the statements that they're making are statements that you're essentially getting behind, which is really, really interesting. So I want to share this screen again. And we could go on. We could watch this whole thing. In fact, I will. I'll make sure that this is linked down below because I did not intend to share it, but now I did. Um, Y'all, it's so fascinating how when people are signed in, when people are being nominated for positions, this is not the first person who's been like, I mean, my past career should not reflect in what I currently am committed to be doing. My past experience, my past affiliations, my past perspectives should not be a part of this hearing. I know that I can be, inclusive in what I stand for, even if it's not necessarily what I agree with. And it's like, listen, that doesn't ever happen. When people step into positions of authority, they're stepping into positions based on their experience, based on their position, based on the things that matter to them, the priorities that matter to them. And hopefully, those are influenced by the people that they're actually representing. But oftentimes, sadly, oftentimes the positions that politicians and people in authority in our government are taking are often based on their own agenda and their own benefit versus the actual understanding of the people. And so this video is a great example of somebody who's just sidestepping the question and just saying, hey, like my past experience, my past affiliation shouldn't have anything to do with this hearing. I'm clear that I will be, nonpartisan in my judgment of the law, blah, blah, blah. And we hear this so many times, y'all. We hear this so many times, and oftentimes on either side, right? On the far left side, on the far right side, this isn't actually what's happening. What ends up happening is I'm going to follow through on my agenda. The people who are paying me, the people who are backing me, they're the voices that I'm hearing over other people's voices. And it's discouraging to me in a lot of ways because in our modern day, it is a almost impossible thing to run for president, to run for senate, to run for different positions, whether they're local, state, federal, without getting backed by people who are spending, who are putting millions of dollars into your campaign. And then we wonder, as the American people, we wonder, okay, like, are they being paid off? How do we know the difference between somebody giving money and that person actually running the show or having a higher level of influence in the policies or positions that that person will take? And so it's the prices of politicians running have just continued to go up. It's really interesting here in Michigan because we've got our Senate positions that we're running for. And this is the first time in a very, very long time that we have a really solid candidate on the Republican side for Senate. And it's so fascinating seeing like his ads and then, Slotkin on the other side, the Democratic side, and watching how like it's a money game. And it's so frustrating that it's a money game. I don't think it needs to be a money game, but it is right now. And it's okay, she's raising, such and such $1 million. And so we need to pour more money onto the Republican side and blah, blah, blah. it feels like it's always a money game. And if it's a money game, then it's a power game because somebody is supplying the money. So, that's like on a smaller scale here in Michigan. I mean, I say smaller, it's a very, very important race, but on a smaller scale than the presidential uh, game, but it's the same one that applies, which is okay, where is the money? Who's paying for Kamala's campaign? What's the kind of influence that they have on the agenda, right? Because we know that these I mean, I don't. I think even on the Trump side, he's obviously being very much positioned by other people. He's obviously got a lot of counsel around him that he seems to be listening to more now than he did in his initial races, which I don't think is a benefit to him. But anyway, but definitely on the Harris side, like she has said hardly anything up until like 24 hours ago, and even then, it was very, very vague policies, very vague. We're going to give you all of these things. We're going to do this whole marketing scam. We're going to give you all these things, but not actually telling us how she's going to pay for it. In fact, we have a video here. Y'all, if you have not gone and watched her rally in North Carolina on Friday, go take a look at it. There's also plenty of summaries out there. Again, once you start getting away from the source, you're going to start getting agenda in what she actually said. I've cited a ton of articles down below on either side: New York Post, New York Times, CNN, Fox. So depending on where you get your news, those are all ones that are going to absolutely have an agenda in their summary of what she said. But if you go to the actual full video that is linked down below in the description, you can go watch it. Also, there is a transcript of her rally and what she said, as well in the description. I got so excited when I realized, oh, there's transcripts for rallies, which is amazing. So there was that transcript below in the description. You can go read that if you like to read things more than you like to watch them. But she was asked by a reporter, and I'll kind of, before I show you the video, I want to kind of break down a little bit of her actual positions on her. Oh, I gotta find my thing. Oh, let me show you this. So this is the transcript. Good old White House. This is the transcript of her rally. So you can go take a look at some of the things that she says in here. Obviously, she does a long intro, blah, 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 blah. And then right here, she starts talking about what she's talking about, which is, this is a very economy focused speech. Now, she promises a lot of things. And if you look at any of the articles out there that are commenting on her agenda, on her economic plan, a lot of them are like, these all sound great, but she's actually pushing trillions more dollars into the debt that we already have, which is going to increase inflation again. She didn't talk about inflation at all, actually, in her economic plan. So she's promising a lot of things, but she's not necessarily explaining how she's going to pay for them. So a lot of these things sound really, really good to American people, especially to the middle class, the lower class. Hey, this sounds great, right? We're going to have extra money in our pockets for having kids. We're going to have help with buying our first house. This all sounds really, really great. But again, if we don't know how we're paying for it, and we don't know what that's actually, we obviously, plenty of economy specialists are saying, listen, like this is inevitably what's going to happen if she actually goes along with this plan. First off, half the things that she's actually promising will never come to fruition because they were never intended to come to fruition on scale. But also on top of that, what the consequences to the economy, you may have like a big uptick and then a hard crash because these things aren't meant to be to scale. They're not sustainable, and they're choices that are actually just going to hike up prices instead of actually lowering them. She's not flooding the markets with supply. She's just increasing the demand and trying to push down, trying to price control everything, which inevitably doesn't happen and doesn't work. We've already been in that game in the 70s and it didn't work. So I want to show you this video because it is quite the thing. So I'm going to back this up a little bit. So this is a reporter asking her, hey, you made some policy choices And, what does this actually mean? How are you actually going to pay for them? Let's back this up.
Tomorrow for next month. But it's coming along. I feel good about it. I mean, essentially,
Great quality.
Much of what you've probably heard me talk about before in terms of just what I believe to be the promise of.
This is a little bit early. She's talking to a reporter who's asking her, what is she going to say in her speech? Blah, 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 blah. Thank you. Thank you. Continue.
America and the fact that we're all in this, and there's obviously a lot at stake, but there's also a lot to feel good about in terms of the future of our country. So
Okay, this is something that I'm glad we started a little bit early. This is something that I want to point out in what she says and what Walt says. They talk a lot about the future very vaguely, very ambiguously, and they say a lot of like joy, hope. They say a lot of like, we need to be enthusiastic about the future. But the reality is, and this is something that we've seen time and time again in world history, in American history, is when we don't actually look at the history books, when we don't actually look at the past to study it, to use our discernment, to understand what didn't work, what mistakes did we make? Are we making them over again just because we're ignoring the past and focused on the future? That is ridiculous and absurd. And the fact that people think that that's okay to just ignore history, ignore the past, ignore what we've already decided, what we've already chosen, what we've already done is mind-blowing, because we end up handicapping ourselves because we don't actually understand what happened in the past. And so then we keep making the same mistakes and we don't actually know what they are when we see them.
There will be a lot that is about what I believe is a way forward, a new way forward, and bringing everyone along in that.
You unveiled your some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those, and can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities.
So she's basically saying nothing here. Like, if you heard anything of substance, let me know in the comments. I sure didn't. You can actually go, I have this video linked in the description down below because I know the audio is not so great. So if you go listen to it on your space, you can hike it up as loud as you want and listen to what he said. Basically, that reporter's saying, hey, you've talked about all of these policies and all of this economic plan that you're doing. How are you actually paying for it? She's essentially saying, it'll pay for itself. The return on investment is just humongous and we shouldn't worry about that. We should be focused on the future. It's going to pay for itself. Okay, got it. So now we're going to go listen to Grant Cardone, who is a business owner. He's a multimillionaire, probably plus some. It's been a minute since I've looked at his numbers, but he started from scratch. And he's started from scratch many times to prove the point that you actually can make money in our economy. You actually can build things that people actually want. And Fox interviewed him yesterday to comment on Kamala's economic plan. So we're going to listen to that.
Payment support for first-time home buyers. But President Trump says policies like this will destroy our country.
What they're doing is a communist takeover of our country. Her plan is very dangerous because it may sound good politically, and that's the problem. And we have to be very careful, because when somebody gets up and says, we're going to give you everything, $25,000 for a house, we're going to give you all sorts of little goodies, free health care, we're going to give you everything. This is communist, this is Marxist.
Do you know what? I am not a Trump fan. He drives me insane. And when he says these things, it just makes me laugh because it literally is like, it literally is this. It's literally like, we're going to give you all these things. Like, look at all these awesome things we're going to give you. But we're just going to hide the price tag underneath because you get all of these things. It's like the people in the Bath and Body Works store who are like, you get all of these bonuses if you spend $100 or more. And it's like, but I didn't have $100 to spend on this anyway. Huh? Right? That's what this ends up being.
This is fascist.
And Kamala Harris also makes no mention of the crippling interest rates, how high they are. The current average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage is nearly 6.5%. That is up 133% since the Biden-Harris administration took over. CEO of Cardone Ventures, Grant.
This is huge, actually. I want to comment on this. This is, again, the example of not acknowledging the past and just throwing things out there, right? There are plenty of politicians who do this, by the way, on either side, on the Democratic side, on the Republican side. There are plenty of politicians that do this. They promise a lot of things, but they're not actually grounded in actual fact, in the actual economy, in the actual country and how it works. What are the problems? What are the opportunities? It's not grounded in reality. And so what we end up having is a lot of promises that sound amazing, that sound very connected to the American people's needs. But then it's like, this is why we need the professionals who are saying, hey, this is my life. My life is to study economics. My life is to study the stats. My life is to study the money and where it goes. This actually doesn't work. And this is a huge, huge problem in Harris's position, in the way that she is rolling out her policies, and the fact that we haven't heard much of her policies at all, is that she's talking about the future completely disconnected to the past. And then you got Trump on the other side that doesn't shut up about the past and isn't really talking that much about the future either. So it's like, y'all, can we have somebody that talks about the past in a realistic way and then is enthusiastic and optimistic and opportunistic based on that to say, hey, this is how we fix the future. This is how we start working together to actually get ourselves out of this hole and have sustainable growth in our country, in the economy, in education, in family development, in professional career development. Like, y'all, can we just have somebody that's running for president that can ground on those two things? Because we got one that's so disconnected to the past. I don't know if she ever even, anyway. And then you've got the other one that is so obsessed with the past that he's not really talking in a way that people can relate to the future. Anyway, Cardone comes on here and talks about Kamala's economic policies and how, oh, I don't know, they won't work.
Cardone joins us now. Good morning, Grant.
And good morning to you.
Good morning. How will we afford this? $25,000 if you're a first-time homeowner. We're going to pay for all illegals that come across our border, their health care. We're going to make everyone pay into this, into a single system health care. How will we afford this? Plus, they're paying for college tuition.
Yeah, Ainsley, look, Kamala Harris is either financially illiterate or she believes her audience is. This is called come on marketing. The $25,000 credit is a come on. It will not happen. The $6,000 child credit requires you to have 2 kids in the same year. That's a come on. The 4 million homes that she came out with yesterday in 4 years is absolutely impossible in this country. And to control prices is a come on. This is a marketing strategy, a gimmick where there's a promise of an offer that cannot be delivered at scale. It's typically used as a bait and switch, some kind of offer that exaggerates, that has hidden costs, exaggerated claims. And Kamala Harris is the come on queen now. That should be her new title.
What's required for a first-time homeowner? I know you told our producers earlier that it takes a lot more than $25,000.
Yeah, look, $25,000 credits are already being delivered by builders, by the way. So the government doesn't need to do this. The builder is willing to do it today. But even if you could do that, the average loan today is over $400,000. The average cost of a home is $440,000. So even if you gave a credit, the first-time home buyer does not have the down payment. $32,000 on average this year is the down payment, much less the ability to maintain the house, to take care of the insurance, which could be as high as $1,000 a month, the HOA fees, and the property taxes. So while she says she'll give $25,000 away, it's like the car dealer that says, look, the payments are going to be $90 a month and no money down, but you get there and you leave with a $500 or $600 payment. It's impossible to deliver, like the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act that delivered nothing to this country. It was $3.2 trillion. That could have built 8 million homes, or it could have provided 48 million Black households with $300,000 in cash. But that didn't happen either.
Grant, thank you so much for giving us your perspective. We appreciate you waking up early for us.
Honestly, y'all, I feel like, again, also linked in the description down below, you can go watch that, go watch it again, maybe watch it 3 times, because I appreciate him breaking down what this actually means. And I'm excited for other people to comment on it as well, on either side, the conservative side, the liberal side, because I do want to hear from multiple perspectives on her plan, on how they think that she can actually build it. Because, hey, there might be somebody that's saying, well, we didn't think about this factor, and this factor will absolutely support her in actually getting the job done. So I'm excited to see people actually comment on it. What's fascinating is I've heard very, very little from those who've been backing her since she became the presumptive nominee, and still is, because she hasn't accepted it yet. She will this week at the DNC. They're really not saying anything of substance either, which, to be honest, like, I guess if I was in their position, I probably would keep my mouth shut too, because it's like, well, what do you say? She's not saying much. What would you say in comment to her not saying much? So this is, again, one of those examples of, like, who's in charge here? Who's in charge, right? So, like, there's a couple things here. I could talk all day long about politics. I could talk all day long about this stuff, because it's very fascinating to me. It's very fascinating to observe what's happening, to notice the themes, the patterns. But there's some things that we got to walk away and say, okay, let's actually learn from this. Let's notice what's happening. Let's notice the patterns, right? Just like Cardone's saying, this is a marketing strategy. Say what people want to hear and worry about the details later. And we've seen this time and time again from politicians on either side. We've seen this especially from the Democratic side. Do all these things, promise all these things, promise that the federal government is going to, give you all this money and give you all these tax breaks and pay off your college loans, pay off your college debt without any consequences. Well, absolutely not. That's baloney. There's always consequences. If you give somebody a break, somebody else is paying for it. And that's not always a bad thing, but it's important to understand who's actually paying the price tag for this, right? And in this case, when you look at her economic plan, the American people are paying the price tag for the benefits that we have been promised from her, if they even follow through at all. And so this is an opportunity for us to look at, got it, okay, this is what's happening, not just in politics, but also in education, in the family, in culture, in music. We're going to talk about this week in particular around modern psychology, how this has a huge, huge influence in what's happening in politics. And I do believe they are both very, very highly linked for such a time as this. The way in which modern psychology disconnects from any kind of reality, but that you can make your own reality. It's very future focused without groundedness in the reality of the past. And it sounds really great. You can make anything of yourself. You don't need to be limited by your past. Well, your past also is a huge part of who you are. And it's a part of you being a human being on the planet. We're going to talk about this. I don't want to riff on this right now. But, everything in education, whether that's traditional education, non-traditional education, if your modern psychology is being filtered through is filtering through all of the different areas of our lives, and it's hugely preparing our brains for hearing this kind of stuff that is a lot of promises, a lot of joy, hope, freedom, all of these things, without actually being grounded in any kind of fact, reality. There's nobody, I haven't found anybody in her campaign, anybody in her administration that is saying anything of genuine substance. And I wish that I wish there was another candidate is what I wish, but definitely don't want Harris to win because she's insane and her administration is insane. And I am blown away by the passes that everybody's giving her on the lack of substance. But if we're not going to have Harris, then we're likely going to have Trump. And I don't like him. I don't agree with a lot of what he says. I agree with some of the things he says. And, you know, I wish that they would take the advantage, take the opportunity right now to actually be so clear, be so specific, be so grounded in not just the past. Hey, here's the reality, but also here's the opportunity. Here's the future. Here's what we as the American people need to be doing. Here's what we need to be doing now, not just when I become president. It sort of feels like politicians nowadays are just saying, when I become president, like, here's all the cool things that you get behind door number one, when it's like, if they really care about the American people, then we need to be talking about, listen, we're in crisis mode right now in the United States. Our economy is horrible. The things that, like, the amount that things cost is insane. It is squeezing normal average Americans out of their own opportunities, their own ability to pay off the basic needs that they have. We need to get to work. Here's what we need to do now, leading up to the presidency. Let's get a head start. Let's move. I mean, come on. These people who are running for president on either side, these people who are running for president are clearly in power, clearly have huge influence, clearly are very well known. They have a huge following. Both of them do have a huge following. Get to work now. Why are you waiting? Right? Why are you waiting? It felt like, you know, on the Republican side, it felt like Trump just sort of disappeared after he lost the last presidency. And now he's back and it's like, oh, where have you been? And then Kamala seems to want to disconnect her entire reputation to Biden, and yet also is building off of the legacy and incredibleness that Biden Harris created in their 4 years of being president, which I don't know where that is. Let me know where that is. It's interesting, even like reading the White House's like summary of the Biden Harris administration. And when you go and actually fact check some of those things, it's like their numbers are so inflated. Even Kamala says in her rally, she said, we created 16 million jobs in the last 4 years of being in the administration. Y'all, those are such inflated numbers because they had to work back so many jobs that were lost. There were over 20 million jobs lost at the onset of COVID in February 2020. A lot of those jobs were significantly brought back while Trump was in office, not while Biden and Harris were in office, while Trump was in office. And Trump and Harris had to work on getting the rest of them back during their time and have had about 4 million jobs after that, on top of where we were in 2020. So when they say we've created 16 million jobs, it's like, that sounds amazing. Why is our economy not reflecting that? Well, because it's not, because the reality is we're working backwards. And a lot of their agenda, a lot of their conversations have been from a place of, look at all of these things that we've created, when we're saying, no, hold up. You walked into an economy that was struggling so much because of a global pandemic. And now we're kind of working our way up. And yet, in so many ways, the American people are not experiencing that. In fact, if anything, they're experiencing higher inflation numbers, higher costs of rent, higher costs of housing, higher costs of food, higher costs of gas. I mean, come on, like, we all are experiencing that. Every single one of us are experiencing that. Whether you run a business, which I've run a business for the last 4 years, it has been struggle to the point where I'm having to completely shift my whole business plan to be very practically minded, very practically focused in the things that I'm offering, because to offer art, to offer creativity, to offer the arts in general is something that is just not practical. There are people that have established themselves for years now where it's working, they have it working, more power to you. Go after it. If it's working, do it. And the practicality is tons of Americans, tons of the world, they're not actually able to afford doing something extra because they can't afford even paying off the basic necessities. That's the world that we live in. So instead of seeing that, it's so interesting because like I had a season at the beginning of this year where I felt really depressed about the fact that my business was not working, and it didn't seem to be working the way that I wanted it to. It didn't seem to be working with all of the hard work that I've put into it in the last 4+ years. It felt depressing that it wasn't working. And at the end of the day, I had to get to the point where I looked in the mirror and I said, okay, what I'm doing is not working. What is the opportunity? How can I actually shift my focus, shift my game plan, shift what I'm doing so that I'm actually offering something that benefits people, right? Because if I'm offering something that people aren't buying, then it just tells me that either what I'm offering is not seen as valuable, or it's not seen as valuable to the audience that I'm pushing at. So maybe I need to change different audiences, played that game, or I just need to change what it is that I'm offering. And you may be in a similar boat where you have a business, or maybe you're working for a company and you can see they're going down and you're like, what do I do? What career do I go to? What do I shift into? Look at what are the positions that are constantly being asked to be filled, and go learn those skills, because there are absolutely skills, there are absolutely opportunities in the world of things that will, like, listen, the plumbers will never be out of a job. The plumbers will never be out of a job. They'll never be out of a job. Now, you may not want to be a plumber, but there are plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of jobs. There's plenty of positions that are being looked for, that are being asked for, that are open and wanting to be filled. And there's not enough people to fill them. And so it's time. I never thought that I would be the person to say, like, something other than go after your dreams, go after what you love, do what you love what you do. You can learn to love what you do if it's fulfilling the objective, if it's filling the purpose. And the purpose of a job is make enough money to pay off, to save some, to be able to do the things that you would enjoy doing. I had this conversation with a friend of mine just the other day, which is like, your job is not going to fulfill every satisfactory bone in your body. Your job is not going to be the thing that when you go to bed at night, you're like, I just did my job today and it makes me so happy and blah, blah, blah. For some of you, you are in that position where you love your job. But if you didn't have people around you that you love, if you didn't have hobbies or things that you enjoy, then that job, the pressure on that job to be everything to you would end up being so much pressure that eventually it crumbles on the inside. It crumbles itself in. I'm looking for the phrase and I can't find it. But anyway, like the thing itself can't hold the pressure that you're actually expecting and you're actually putting on it. And so the reality is, like, you can get a job that you don't love, but you may be good at, for the sake of bringing in the income that you need, saving up, building up your emergency funds, building up, doing the Dave Ramsey thing, building up, saving, investing, and then being able to actually do the things that you enjoy, because you can now. You can afford to do them. I love art. I love painting. I love all of these things. When I was running my own business, there were plenty of seasons where I could not afford the supplies that I needed to actually do my job, to do the thing that I love to do. And in so many ways, that was almost worse, because then it wasn't just I'm doing another job and when I'm off in the evenings, on the weekends, I can do my other things and I have enough supplies and I have enough money to actually invest in it. It was, oh, wait, no, I can't afford that because I'm trying so hard to make this my livelihood that now I can't actually afford the supplies that were for the thing that I enjoyed, that now I have to do because it's my job, right? So there are plenty of you out there that may really, it may be working for you. Awesome. Go for it, right? If you've got a niche that is working, do it. And there are plenty of opportunities. It's just, are we willing to actually look at them? Are we willing to look beyond what we think we love or what we think we should do or what other people are telling us to do? And these are all the things that, as you observe, like, you could look at politics and what's happening in the economy and what's happening socially and what's happening culturally, and you could get really depressed. Y'all, I am having the most fun that I've had in a good long time talking through this stuff with you guys, studying, researching. I'm like every day, all day researching, looking up politics. People could observe this and be like, how in the world are you not getting stressed? How are you not pulling out your hair for studying politics, studying what people are saying, researching, like being all in on what's happening on the political landscape? I'm like, because I know the end of the book. I have a strong grounded faith. I'm not going anywhere. People can't take my soul. They can't change who I am on the inside. I can study, I can observe, I can comment. I don't have to be worried about everything feeling like the end of the world in the literal sense of the word, right? And that is amazing. It's amazing when you remind, and I know a lot of you who follow me are Christians. You know where you're going when you die, when your body is no more on this earth. You know where you're going. And that's an incredibly hopeful, comforting, locked in sort of reality, right? When you understand that it doesn't matter how crazy the world gets, I don't have to worry about where I'm going. Now, for some Christians, that ends up making us really apathetic. And so then we shut down everything and we're like, nope, I'm just putting my blinders on and I'm doing my thing and I don't care about anybody else. But really, as believers, this should make us even freer to get in there, to lean in, to serve people, to have conversations, to share the gospel, to be in relationships, to engage in things that actually benefit the livelihood of the people around us, to engage in the world, to engage in politics, to engage in economy, not from a place of obsession, but from a place of hope, from a place of purpose. And this is what I'm finding that I want to share with joy for other people to experience, because you could look at the news and be really depressed, but that just goes to show what you're looking for and what you think you're looking at, right? If we're looking at politics and social issues and the economy and all the things that are happening and saying, like, this is the end of the world, I hate this, I'm so stressed, then we got to change the way that we're looking at it. We got to change the attitude and perspective in which we're looking at it. And this is the thing that I've really almost like 180'd on when it came to the news and politics and all of the things, because I was really interested in it and I couldn't not engage, but I felt really frustrated. Like I had to defend my position and fight for it and blah, blah, blah. When really it's like, take a breath. I can have hope and purpose. I can be confident and engage in something that feels like it's going down, like it's not working, like it's rigged, like whatever it is, right? Because we all have these questions, we all have these concerns, and they're valid concerns. They're grounded in the fact that we live in a real world with real issues. But we can do that with hope. We can do that with purpose. We can do that with confidence. And you can't have confidence if you don't know where you're going. You can't have confidence in you can't have confidence unless you know where you're going. And the only way to really know where you're going is I could go on. I could go on and on and on. I think the biggest thing is, like, if you're grounded from a place of, I know where I'm going, I know who's getting me there, right? Because I think that's a huge thing too. We look around in the world. I did not expect to be ending this video this way. This is great. We look around in the world and we see a lot of violence. We see a lot of hate. We see a lot of anger. We see a lot of discouragement. We see a lot of apathy, disconnection, people just like disconnecting onto themselves and just being, for some people, it's like they end up being depressed. For other people, they end up being self-absorbed. We're just seeing a lot of this around us at any given time. And it just goes to show that when we put our trust, when we put our confidence, when we put our hope, when we put our worship and our faith in something that cannot actually hold us, that cannot actually sustain us, it ends up crumbling in on itself. And that's often what's happening. My peers, they're a huge generation that's worshiping lifestyle. I want to be comfortable. I want to be happy. I want to do the things that I want to do. I want to have the things that I want to have, but I don't want to have to work for it. I don't want to have to put blood, sweat, and tears in for it. I don't want to have to actually put any effort in. I just want to have these things. And oh, wait, now I live in a world that's saying I deserve these things. So the fact that I don't have these things means that somebody is wronging me. This is a completely my pastor says this is like essentially inverted moralism, which is like the opposite of what is actually moral. And that's the world that we see right now, which is like, I deserve, I deserve, I deserve. And the reality is we don't deserve anything. None of us are perfect. All of us have fallen short of a perfect law. All of us have fallen short of a God who calls for perfect law, for total obedience, for total love and worship of the perfect plan, of the perfect creator, of the creator who actually gave you life. And if we're not actually holding ourselves up to that standard, which by the way we can't because we are sinful, if we're not holding ourselves up to that perfect law, then we didn't measure up. And the fact that there is grace, the fact that there is full forgiveness, the fact that there is the ability to actually acknowledge I'm never going to measure up, but I'm actually receiving the gift that God is giving me of eternal life and life with him, and being in a place where there is no pain, where there is no political tension, where there is no hardship from the many, many, many things that we experience hardship through in the world that we live in, both, created by ourselves and also created by others, that absolutely impacts and influences us. To know that we can live in that world through the acknowledgement of I have not measured up and I will not measure up apart from you. And then being able to actually receive that gift from the Lord and from the Lord alone, y'all, that is so exciting, because then when you meet your neighbors, when you meet your community, when you meet the internet, when you observe what's happening in the world, you're not coming from a place of this is the end of the world. You're coming from a place of got it. There's work to do. There's a mission to do. There are people to serve and love and show true love to. There is, this is why people keep asking me, they're like, Katie, why in the world are you going back to college? Why are you going into politics? That seems insane. This is not a time for Christians to be in politics. Why are you doing this? And my answer is because this is exactly the time to be in this space. It's exactly the time. Just because it's not comfortable, just because it is difficult, just because there's a lot of opposition and a lot of tension, doesn't mean to run away. In fact, it means that I can lean in, because I have the freedom of knowing where I'm going, and that nobody can actually touch my soul. Nobody can actually take my soul. Nobody can actually change who I am in the eternal ways that matters. And so to actually be somebody who engages, who learns, who understands, I'm so excited to learn even more than what I know, because what I know now is like a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. And if that's your perspective as well, if you feel overwhelmed in this world of like, I don't know what's happening, it just seems it seems really depressing, then I get you, because I definitely was you. And still there are moments that I am that way too. And I think the biggest thing is like, start with the Bible, start with prayer, start with the things that will not change. And that will help you also to understand the human condition, because the human condition is the thing that is reflecting what we're seeing in the world, what we're seeing in politics, what we're seeing in education, what we're seeing in the culture of our country and the world, the wars, all the things. This is the human condition. This is people being with people, sinful people being with sinful people. It's not a shock to me what's happening in the world, but that understanding of people's behaviors does not cause me to be apathetic. It causes me to be compassionate, to be loving, to be justice oriented, to be right and wrong oriented, to be law oriented, right? To take care of people, to protect people, to teach people how to protect themselves. And that is worth it for me, essentially. And there are lots of people, I'm sure that there will be lots of people that are like, you're absolutely insane. I'm sure there are currently people that are like, you're absolutely insane. There may be people who are watching this live that are like, you're absolutely insane. That's okay. I probably am, just a little bit. But it's exciting. It can be very exciting to observe everything that's happening. I was journaling and having my quiet time this morning, like really early. And I just was writing. I'm like, this is so much fun. And I know that it's not always fun, right? What we're into, what we're creating, how we're impacting, how we're serving people is not always fun. There are plenty of seasons that it has not been fun. But the reality is, like, when you can bring hope, true hope, to every room that you're in, true hope to every situation that you're in, true hope to every end of the world kind of interaction that you have, where other people would say it's a lost cause, forget about it, just get in and get out. When you are the one that brings hope, and ultimately it's Christ through you, but when you are the one that brings hope to that room, even your interactions with other people are going to change. How they respond is going to change. What you walk away, even the stressors start to change. They become less and less because you are walking into a room knowing what's true and bringing that truth to the room, bringing that hope, bringing that compassion to the room. I think one of the most comforting things that I remind myself of is that there are plenty of open doors that I get to walk into, but it doesn't mean that everything in that room is going to change because I walk into the room. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree. Everybody's going to, be truly loving, It doesn't mean that everything is going to change for the better in that room, but there is something that will be influenced. There is someone that God will use me through to serve, to love, to show himself to them. And that's worth it. And so the doors are the opportunities, that the skills we choose to learn. The doors are the education that we choose to have, the rooms that we are able to get in based on that, the family and friends that we have around us. Those doors are just the opportunities. And what we choose to actually allow God to do, like what we actually allow God to do when we walk into that room, that's up to him. And that's really freeing in a world of politics and, hopeless economics, as they often seem. In a world where things are getting more expensive and harder, and yet we know the truth. We have the truth. We hold the truth. We hold the hope that will never change and will not go away when inflation rises to a point where we're like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? And to be honest, it's already gotten there. So that's my little spiel on why all of this is just temporary, and we get to engage from a place of care and thoughtfulness and service and joy, not from a place of hopelessness and skepticism and cynicism, because y'all, there are lots of us out there that are playing that game. And that's really depressing. And that's the stuff that's really depressing to watch, is the people who are being cynical and being like, forget it, your vote doesn't count, your vote doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. It's like, your vote matters until you decide it doesn't. And then you're right. You're always right. If you decide that your vote doesn't matter, then you're right, because you didn't vote, or you didn't choose to engage, or you didn't choose to get on that board, or you didn't choose to vet that organization before you said, yeah, I'm going to join, right? Whatever it is, we're going to go loop back all the way to the beginning of the video. Who you associate yourself with, who you serve with, what they think, what basically, like, whenever you're saying, I've had this conversation with my family and my pastor and my pastor's wife a couple of different times, which is like, for me, as someone who has experience and a skill set in marketing, advertising, leading teams, things like that, I'm always like, I'm vetting the businesses that I want to associate with just as much as they're vetting me. I hope they're vetting me as much as I'm vetting them, because if I am backing their messaging, their position, by putting out content on behalf of them as a part of my job, then I got to understand that everything that they're saying, I am essentially backing. Do I agree with them? If yes, go for it. If no, do I really want that position? Do I really, does the money outweigh the consequences of associating with something that is not morally aligned, right? And that's been a huge thing for me to learn the hard way over the last several years, because I've been in connection and I've been in work with lots of businesses that I look at now and I'm like, I mean, I'm grateful that I'm not working for them anymore, but also, like, there will be consequences of being associated with them, not because I'm judging not because I'm judging them, but because I'm looking at it and saying, got it, this was not morally aligned. This was not who I say I believe in, and what I say I believe in it is not. There's a discrepancy between that and what I'm actually doing and what I'm actually associated with. And so these are all really important things for you to look at, especially if you're maybe you're like me and you're a young American and you want to lead and you want to engage and you want to serve people. You got to understand who you're putting yourself with, who you're connecting arm in arm with, who are you associating with, what do they believe in? If you're not asking these questions, this is also like a dating conversation, y'all. We're getting into dating now. Like, seriously, I have dated very little in my life. I'm 25 years old. I've dated very little. And to be honest, a lot of the reason I've dated very little is because I've engaged in lots of conversations, lots of in-depth conversations about values, about priorities, about religion, about morals, about how that actually behaves in our current culture, in politics, in the economy. Like, how does it actually look in the choices and priorities that you're making in your real world life? What you intellectually or psychologically say that you believe, like, what does that actually look like in your real life? And y'all, I just haven't found him yet. That's okay. Just haven't found him yet. And he's out there somewhere, but haven't found him yet. And so, like, if you're not asking these questions, if you're not engaging in in-depth conversation, if you're saying, hey, he's cute or they're cute or whatever, and you're walking into relationships, whether that's a business relationship or a romantic relationship, a professional relationship, a personal relationship of any kind, and you're not asking these questions, then you're going to end up finding the answers, and they're going to be in a situation or a circumstance where now you're on the line for their position or their agenda or their politics or their morals that isn't actually aligned with yours. So ask the questions ahead of time. I had a phone interview like a couple weeks ago, and I asked the woman on the phone what their company's position was on DEI. And y'all, I think she was probably silent for about 10 seconds before she actually said, can I get back to you on that? I said, well, yeah, absolutely. But like, what is your perspective? Like, I'm sure you have like this is what our company says, but like, what are you actually backing? Like, how do you actually assess the policies that you make around DEI? And so then she started explaining, and basically it was like verbatim what was on the website. And kind of asked her a couple other questions. It's almost like she could tell I was asking from a perspective of like criticalness instead of like, I'm so glad that you have DEI statements on your website. No, that was not my response. That was not my tone. And I didn't take the job because the job would have required me to market their policies, market their agendas, market their social engagement, which was not at all biblically or morally aligned with what I believe is true. And that's my choice, right? It's not a bash on the company. They do a lot of great work. But this is something that we need to be looking at when we're taking jobs, when we're going to college campuses, when we're engaging in the economy, when we're engaging with family, when we're engaging with friends. Not everybody is going to agree with what you agree with. Absolutely. Please surround yourself with people who are going to engage in a respectful way, who do disagree. I think that absolutely helps us to strengthen our own perspectives, to understand them in relationship to other people and other perspectives. And if you're basically locking arm in arms with someone and saying, I agree with them, I'm backing what they're saying, then that's a whole different kind of relationship than being in a respectful debate on conversation. You're basically backing them to say, I agree with what they're saying. What they're saying is what I believe. And when we go back to the Senate nomination hearing where Josh Hawley was asking her, like, you back this organization, you work with them, you are essentially a part of their organization, and they're putting out these things. What's your response? And then she was like, well, I don't associate with that. And when I'm judged, obviously I would be impartial and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you won't, because if what you're backing when you're not thinking about, right? It's almost like what we're backing when we're not thinking about anybody watching, what we're backing, what we're promoting, what we're encouraging, what we're a part of when we think nobody's looking and nobody's watching is actually what we think, is actually what we believe, is actually what we agree with. So if somebody just like put a spotlight on your entire life, all of the connections, all of the things that you said, all of the statements that you made, all of the organizations that you backed, all of the people that you promoted, if a flashlight was shown on all of that, would you be proud of it? Would you agree with it? Or would you start like backing up? Would you start backpedaling because you're like, no, I don't associate with that anymore. I don't associate with that anymore. And this is what really frustrates me, like when I'm on a nerdy binge and I'm watching these Senate hearings and I hear these nominations and I hear their responses to these things, it's like they're acknowledging that they don't agree with what their past connections or their past relationships were with different organizations, and yet they refuse to actually honestly and genuinely acknowledge those things and say, hey, yeah, like I was engaged with organizations back then that I do not agree with. This is my position now. Definitely made those decisions when I was, thinking that this was true or whatever, and I don't agree with those anymore. Okay, great. And then we move on, right? So in other words, like they could actually do themselves a favor, but the reason that they're, sidestepping is because there's clearly something there that they want to hide. And this comes back to our presidential election, which is, there's clearly a lot that Kamala is not saying. There's clearly a lot that our Democratic presumed nomination this week, she'll actually officially accept, I believe. There's a lot that she's not saying, and there's a lot of ambiguity that is coming out of her mouth that's just word salad, as people have often said. It's like she has made word salad famous and normal in the political landscape. And so time will tell. Y'all, tick tock. We got time. And we're going to find out both on the Harris side and on the Trump side. We're going to start seeing what happens when the big tension, when the big highs start to come down, and where the chips fall. And inevitably, Harris is going to have to answer questions. She's going to have to answer questions from people that are asking actual questions, relevant questions, not questions with a you look amazing with your sneakers and your Converse. No, like actual questions that people really care about. And also on the Trump side, like questions, and he definitely has taken a lot of questions from people who have been very, very not Trump fans, looking for the word, but he's definitely answered things. I think Vance has been more clear and more effective in his communication than Trump has been this round, because Vance is very clear and short and to the point. I've understood Trump's position better from Vance than I have from Trump, because he just is so long-winded and he's not saying much. So Vance is probably our better half of the Trump administration when it comes to clearly explaining things and engaging with all different kinds of social media and news agencies. Obviously, like he's taken a lot of news agencies that have been pretty against him and pretty unfriendly and unprofessional in their interviewing behavior. Which, I mean, it's been great to watch the fact that he actually can engage and actually can call it out and can actually answer the questions, even when he's got somebody across from him that's pretty hostile. So we're TikTok, y'all. TikTok. Like, this is going to be a big week with the DNC. We're going to do some recaps on that, obviously. We're going to do some videos. Hopefully this week, we're going to do a video every day. So look forward to that. But at the very minimum, we'll definitely be doing a lot of commenting, a lot of dialogue, a lot of questions, a lot of stuff over on the Twitter side, and of course here on YouTube. So it's been a good day, and I want to leave you with the reminder that hope must fill your life. Hope must fill your perspective of what's happening in the world. And truly, like, if I'm speaking to someone who doesn't have eternal hope, then that would seem pretty hard, because then you're having to muster up hope from things that aren't actually going to fulfill you. So If you have questions about where your hope comes from, definitely comment down below and I'll find you wherever you are. Even if you put your like Instagram handle down there or your Facebook username or whatever, and we can absolutely have a conversation. But if you are a believer and you are a Christian and you know where your hope comes from and that it is eternal, it's not going away. It's not being taken away like your cars are or whatever it is. It sticks around. It cannot be, your soul cannot be taken from you. It doesn't matter how crazy the world gets. This freedom that we have to know that we're going to be okay. This freedom to serve and love and take care of people should fill the way that we engage in politics, should fill the way that we engage in the economy, should fill the way that we engage with our family and friends that may not agree, that may have different opinions. That's all welcome because our freedom says instead of being inward focused, we have the freedom to be outward focused, to not worry about ourselves, to not be obsessed with ourselves, but to focus and serve outward and engage in a way that brings confidence and clarity to the conversations, in a way that is educated, in a way that actually supports people, not only in their physical needs, but also in their spiritual needs. So I hope you have an amazing, amazing week. Happy Monday. Stay close to home. Stay close to your YouTube spaces because we've got more coming up today and again tomorrow. And I will see you on the next video here on YouTube. Have a good day. Bye.